All right, so tonight we're going to go through Collaboration for All, and we're really going to focus in on the book Yes We Can. So you all went home with chapters to read, and we're going to share out, we're going to share the chapters that we read, and I've got an activity for everybody. But first, there was some stuff I did not share with you in our last presentation because I really wanted to go through that blue lens and the story behind everyone. Remember that story with the parent who had real trouble having children, and then they finally had the baby, and it was a very traumatic experience. And then, but before we learned that, they were using lawyers and very adversarial with the teachers. And so I wanted to kind of go through who I am. So the picture in the kitchen is my little brother Jeremy, and you see him? Yeah, he has Down syndrome. So he was born when I was 8, and he is the reason that I have taken the path that I have. So he is my everything. Oh, hi.
Nice to see you.
So I did my undergraduate in special ed. I double majored in special ed and elementary ed. I taught special ed in Michigan. I taught it in New Zealand, which was quite an experience. So that picture up there with the bridge is my family, and we're in New Zealand because that's where I met my husband. Then I'm originally from Michigan, so that picture on the upper right for you is my home, and that's where I go every summer to recharge.
What part?
Traverse City, right here. Yep. And then that middle piece is the reason why we're here tonight, and the reason why I'm so passionate about what I do. Union Park was named a model PLC school this year, and I'm so proud of the work that we did. And what we're going to learn tonight with Yes We Can is where we fit as special educators in the role of the PLC process and in collaborative teams. So this is my big passion, and I'm so excited to bring it to the special ed world and to get us more involved in this. All right. And because I think a lot of the reason why we're here, and we talked about this last time, is our backgrounds. And we made a very pointed decision to do what we do in special ed, especially after coming from different careers. Think about this. How do you finish this sentence? I believe that all students. Just think about it, and then we're going to go around and share. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready.
Can do so much more than even they get credit for.
Love it.
I would say I believe that all students have talents.
Good.
Yeah.
Michael?
I believe all students should have an open opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
I believe that all students, they have support.
Believe that all students want to learn something. It's just finding what they want to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I believe all students should have somebody that believes in them.
I like that. Okay. Good. So, our core beliefs is that we believe that all students can learn at high levels, and that all students, and we will take collective ownership in learning for all kids. And you will hear this from our PLC department, you will hear this from the Student Support Services department, you will hear this from curriculum and instruction, you will hear this from every department, maybe not finance, but, but you will hear this from every department at district office, all the way to our schools and to every classroom. This is what you should be hearing because it's what we believe deep down in our core. So this is the mission of Student Support Services. So our mission is to provide supports and services for extraordinary educational opportunities for every learner. So I'd like you to pause, ponder, and share. What are the barriers that we face every day to ensure this? And then what do we mean by every learner? Give me a thumbs up when you're ready to share.
My barrier, I'm gonna reference the chapter that I read because it talked about how there's a little bit of a difference between kids who are going to be expected to function independently on their own in the future and kids who probably will not ever have that expectation, but that whether or not they're going to function independently on their own, they still deserve to have the opportunity to be pushed as far as they can.
Yeah.
And to be able to learn as much as they can, no matter what their limitations may be. And I think that sometimes the gen ed flow just leaves them in the dust and like, oh, they're never gonna be able to function on their own in life, so I'm not gonna stress about them right now, right? And so we wind up picking them up and saying, well, let's figure out how much we can get you to function on your own. Because they shouldn't just be left behind.
Have you heard of the flipped classroom before? So when you give the assignments to students to do at home so that you can actually have discussions in class, and you really hope that they've done it so that you can have those really rich discussions. So I'm going to give you guys a tiny little note card, and I'm going to ask you to put 5 key learnings that were in your chapter on this. So you get to write really small or this way or on both sides. And then we're going to talk about how your chapter's content reflect the mission statement, which I touched on. And then how it reflects our core beliefs in our district. Okay. All right, so again, chapter 1, understanding the history and reality of special education. So students who are identified as having special needs drop out at a rate 2 times that of students who are not identified. So a lot of the decisions that were made back in 2002 were based on a lot of this research, and they go through quite a bit and the gap that our students were achieving versus our gen ed population. But what they wanted was a mindset shift from special education being an endpoint instead of, it was seen as an endpoint. And I think some of our gen ed teachers still see it that
where
way.
kids go to be,
Yes.
rather than
get them out of my room.
rather
put
than
'em
that's where
there.
they're going to progress.
Yes, exactly. Instead of a gateway
Mm-hmm.
to specialized instruction and deeper learning based on their needs. So that's where the mindset started, that shift began. We're moving away from that wait to fail model and moving into prevention and intervention. And then this is an interesting piece. Unfortunately, by the time the discrepancy model detects the statistically significant difference necessary for eligibility, students are much more than 1 year behind. What does the state of Arizona use?
That discrepancy
The
model.
discrepancy model.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yep, states back east use more of the MTSS model. Also moving to shared responsibilities. So thinking of the students who have IEPs as ours versus mine and yours. And really looking at collective efficacy and best teaching practices on best instructional practices. And looking at teacher prep programs and really focusing on best first instruction instead of philosophy, like we talked about earlier.
We're still to be tested on philosophy.
Yes. Focusing more on results, focusing less on process, embracing a model of prevention and not a model of failure, and then sharing our students. So professional learning communities, and this is a quote right from this book, professional learning communities increase student learning by producing more good teaching, by more teachers, more of the time. Put simply, PLCs improve teaching, which improves student results, especially for the least advantaged students. So we'll go into what the PLC process looks like for you guys later. All right, chapter 2.
Okay. Next section,
You're at a heavy, heavy chapter. This is, okay, This is a heavy chapter. Do you want me to?
Sure,
Okay.
jump in, dive in.
Unless you don't want me to, you can go ahead.
He's only got 4
It
pages,
just
then you
talks
can take
about
it.
the last question, is brainstorming what student should be able to do. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So that's one of the major questions of the PLC process. What do we want students to know and be able to do? So that's unpacking a standard. So when you unpack a standard, and that's what this chapter really dives into, is unpacking standards. So you look at the nouns and verbs in the standard. When we're looking at that standard, how does that get measured? And how do we make sure that they're gonna learn this? So that's where you see, when you walk into classrooms, the success criteria on the boards. When you're walking in, you'll see student success criteria, or you're gonna see the I can statements on the board. Those are the progressions, the learning progressions in order to meet this standard. So they're supposed to meet in their PLC teams and talk about what do they need to do, what are the steps they need to learn, and what skills do they need to learn in order to master this standard. And then those are the lessons that you see each day. And then in a PLC process meeting with their collaborative team, you will see them diving into what an assessment question would look like to measure this standard. And that's where there's a lot of arguing.
Yeah.
And that's where you pull from a lot of different resources and try to understand.
Yeah, so my group does this, and they do that well.
Yeah.
There's also a portion of that turns into a grading
Yes.
time.
The
where-
end of it is grading. So then you look at rubrics and what
Right.
does that look like? What is a 4? What is a
And then
3?
there's
What is a
disagreement.
2? Yes,
And then
there is
there's, okay,
disagreement.
well, how do I decipher this? Can
Yeah.
you read this? What is
But-
this, like?
That part is why it's so important for special ed teachers and service coordinators to be involved in that meeting. Because that way, you're able to modify or accommodate that rubric. How do we grade this? And then how do you have your students graded? Because what's happening is gen ed teachers are grading your kids, and they don't know how to grade based on the accommodations in the IEP. Okay, awesome. So originally, I was gonna have you guys break some standards apart and figure out some learning progressions, but instead, I am gonna show you some really good resources where it's been done. And so part of our PLC process, when I was running them at Union Park, we would go to different states and we would go to different school districts and we would see what they already had. We would look at their state test items, their assessment items, to see if it matched what we were looking for in an assessment piece. We would start with Arizona, and if that didn't look like what we were looking for, we'd go beyond that. And we found some amazing resources in Delaware, Ohio, Florida. We know that all students can learn at grade level or higher. That's our goal. We want to make sure that they learn at grade level or higher. But our reality is, we know that some students come to us with huge learning gaps, and we've got a lot of work to do. And we need to pace it and balance how we do it. So we know that we want them to learn at that grade level, but especially at the high school, we also know that there are some major gaps. And we know after COVID that there's been a lot of trauma and outside challenges in their lives. John Hattie is an educational researcher. Have you guys heard of him? I met him and I geeked out. I was really embarrassed by my own actions. Because this research is something that we base our teaching practices on every single day. So the higher the effect size, the more you should use it in a classroom and the more it should be done. So what you're seeing is, so this is a visible barometer. So reverse effects, suspension, lack of sleep, summer vacation,
Summer vacation.
because they lose everything they learned, boredom and retention, all the way up to the zone of desired effects, collective teacher efficacy. So everybody working towards the same goal. Teacher credibility, teacher clarity, teacher understanding of What are the standards? What are the progressions under those standards? What do they need to know to master that standard? They're all major keywords in education, but these are all the high zone of desired effects. Collaborative team, these are the guiding questions for every PLC. What do we want all students to know and be able to do? What instructional practices will produce our best results? How will we know that the students have learned it? Question 3, what will we do if students have not learned it? And question 4, what will we do if students have already shown mastery? How do we extend their learning? You all know Constitution, right? The school Constitution. It's a 95% free and reduced school. It's our highest title school in the entire district. The principal, who now works for Solution Tree, she took that school to an A rating. So they got an A rating, they got an A+ recognition from the state, and they were a the very first model PLC school in our entire state. So very high expectations of her staff. They worked their butts off. She gave them permission to not follow the rules with fidelity and our curriculum. And she proved to everybody that standards-based and breaking those apart and making sure that every student can learn and will learn the standards, and they will show mastery, and it doesn't matter their background, it doesn't matter their parent involvement, it doesn't matter how much money they do not have, they will succeed, and we are going to create a path for them. And she did. So this is a document that we created for our multi-school team, and it has all sorts of resources from our state and all sorts of resources from other states for kind of guiding the work of a PLC and breaking standards down. But I want to show you, this is the DVUSD PLC page. So this is where you find our breakdown of standards and our curriculum maps so that you know what should be taught every quarter. And some of them are broken down by week, so you can see it by grade level, by content area. But these resources are fantastic, and they're from the state with learning progression. So let's go to English Language Arts with learning progressions. So this actually would help you write IEP goals. So this is why I'm showing it to you. Goes by 3 levels of complexity, so because you can actually see the progressions in every single grade level. This is amazing, and it goes all the way through high school for
So,
every
like,
single
could you go
standard.
back up to that? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So if our kid can track the words from left to right and top to bottom, and maybe the next thing we need to know is identifying that words refer to specific combinations of letters.
So letters put together make a word.
Words.
They're working on this. So they're working on Reading Foundations 1.1 in grade 1. So they're getting graded on that standard for those things.
These standards and notations match ours?
Yes.
Okay.
They do.
So from grading, you could tell the teacher,
Yes.
grade them on these 3 things?
Yep.
Is this like,
This can help you.
does this
with-
progression go from top to bottom?
Yeah.
Because why was then like
Well, Reading
recognizing the
Foundations.
letters at the bottom?
Well, that was a first grade goal. So if we went to the Reading Foundation, was that a 1.1? So if we went to Reading Foundation for kindergarten,
Yeah.
so you can look at the kindergarten progressions and see where they're at. If they're not working, if they don't have anything in that first grade piece, go back to kindergarten and see where they're at with that same standard. Because the language standards are very similar from grade to grade. Especially, high school language standards are grade banded, and they start doing that in 6th grade. So they've broken them down. They've identified what the learning progressions are. Then the last step is just looking at how to assess it. So these right here, the learning progressions, are your lessons and your skills lessons and the skills that you focus on when you're teaching and you're doing your interventions. Is that helpful? I hope it's helpful.
And it's in our module or it's
Yeah.
on the
This is
DVUSD?
I put this in our module in this presentation. So
And that would be the only place I find it.
Yeah.
DVUSD doesn't have it.
DVUSD wouldn't have this. This is
Okay.
me searching for resources
Okay.
for my collaborative teams.
Alright.
So is this in
last
tonight's
one.
thing or right here? Let me see. Okay.
So in tonight's presentation, these links, I would bookmark that link so that you guys can have resources. This link is also a good one because it's more than just Ohio. You can look at Delaware, which has a fantastic, it has something very similar for ELA and math too. And it has learning progressions in there. And it has some samples of assessment items too. We look at, so Achieve the Core has samples of assessment items. Sample assessment items from Smarter Balanced, which is another Common Core testing platform. And then they have released test item samples from all of these states, so you can actually look at how other states are assessing these same standards. So I want you to have a look at this and play around in it a little bit and look for something specific to what your kids are needing right now